Carrie, you got any dating drama for us?
Well, I did have a question, or do have a question.
All right.
What if your expectations are too high? If you have too many deal breakers.
Well, then you're not going to make a deal. You have too many deal breakers. Woody Allen said, reality, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said,
Sure.
Reality is a pretty tough place to live in, but it's the only place you can get a good steak, right? So reality has imperfections, but if we can't deal with imperfections, then we're not going to get a good steak anywhere, right? Because it might be too hot, too cold, it might not be the right plate, whatever. So I think the problem is, okay, you ready for this? The problem is when all of us, and we all do this, Carrie, we do this in everybody's got this issue, whether it's in dating or, other areas of life, where for whatever reason, we fail to prioritize go and no go. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going, if I've got severe, OCD and I'm afraid of germs, I'm just afraid of germs across the board. And so going outside is a no-go. Well,
right.
I'd never feared going outside too much until COVID. Now that's a deal breaker in terms of I'm not going to go hug people I don't know and be locked up without social distancing and, making out with strangers and sneezing all over each other. And no, that's a deal breaker. All right. But other germs, no, I can live with those. So maybe let's talk about your menu of deal breakers. Tell me what your top 5. And by the way, are these deal breakers to dating somebody, or are these deal breakers to like getting serious with somebody?
Let's see. That's a good question.
Important question.
I'd say dating.
Dating. So what are your deal breakers? You won't even date somebody if they don't jump through all these hoops. So what are the hoops? What are the hoops somebody's got to jump through to get out on a date with Carrie?
Let's see. One of the main ones is, does a person have a walk with God or with Christ? I'd say another one would be.
No, wait a minute. Stop for a second, because that can be very, very subjective. All right. So, when we say a walk with God, does it mean that they take the same amount of steps as they walk in a 100-foot trip as you take? Do they skip when you run? Do they leapfrog? Do they roll on the ground on a scooter? How specific, how narrow? Because I've seen people get so specific on this that the disciples wouldn't even be able to hang out with each other. because you're not all alike. So what do you mean? I mean, how nitpicky is this?
I would say the sex thing. In
sex?
Marriage is one thing. That's that's
so
important.
So a walk
for marriage.
Hang on. For you to go out on a date with somebody, when you're saying first they got to have a walk with God, which means that they'll agree to not sleep with you, to wait to sleep with you. Is that kind of what the whole faith thing is for you?
Oh, I don't know if I should bring that out on the first date. Is the only thing.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you said you're not going to go out with somebody unless they have a walk with God. And I'm trying to understand what a walk with God means. And it sounds like you said all that means is that they have the same sexual values as you. but that can't be true,
Well,
right?
that's one thing. No. Mm-mm.
That's one
Yeah.
thing. But what, I mean, it seems like
Right.
even to go out on a date. I'm not saying that you participate, but I'm saying people go out on
Sure.
dates that have different values. See, part of this, and I'm going to
Mhm.
challenge you with something. I wrote a book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. And
Mhm.
I would suggest that book to you because one of the things it talks about is, and I think this is really, really important. And having walked through this with so many people and seeing them go from stuck to married as they begin to work this
Mhm.
program, is that I think
Right.
that one of the most important things that anybody can do in the field of dating is to equate dating, not equate dating as a strategy or for the purpose of finding someone to marry.
Right.
All
Okay.
right. But because exactly what you said is going to happen. Who we end up marrying, they better pass a lot of tests. I mean, you got to put up a
Mm.
lot of hurdles for somebody to get into that final zone, right? But
Mhm.
I think the process of dating is a learning process where you're going out with all kinds of different people that you
Mhm.
99.9% of that you would never get serious with, but that one's going to stand out in that crowd. But to do that, we
Mhm.
learn. And I think this is something that you might learn. And I'm going to leave you with this, to think about that. If
Sure.
you would just say, if you would just say, here's my requirement to go out on a date, that somebody's got to be safe. So I got to have, basically, I know I'm not going to get hurt. I've vetted them in some way, what community they're connected
Mhm.
to, or, where they work, where I'm going to meet them. There's got to be a basic safety thing. But if I know I'm going to be safe, why not go out with anybody for lunch? I mean, have a lunch, get to know a human being. Because even if you
Mhm.
weren't going to be interested in them to get into a relationship, you would have learned something. And here's what we learn when we date a lot of people: we learn some of those things that I thought were so important really aren't. Because I found in this person,
Mhm.
even though I don't want to date them or get serious more than, a few days, that wow, I found out that their intelligence or their values or their spiritual life, or their interests or their sense of humor or their creativity or their intellectual capacities or their sense, their I found that that matters more to me than that other thing I thought was so important. And we grow,
Mhm. Mhm.
we assimilate and accommodate. I'll tell you a story, and I hope did that answer your question?
Sure.
To sort of,
Yes.
make it more casual, and then you won't have to worry about all the gates that they have to go through. So I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I'm gonna go to some other calls. Um, and I'd suggest you get the book because I talk about a lot of this in depth. But I'll never forget this couple came up to me. I was speaking somewhere, and they came up to me and they were holding hands and they went like this, and they're both holding up their hands and they had wedding bands on, and they said, "The book," meaning the book I wrote, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. They said, "The book did it." And I said, "Tell me your story." And I've heard hundreds of these. And I'll never forget the woman said, "Well, for me, it was the whole thing about not having a type and getting rid of all of my expectations and the list and all that stuff. Not for, maybe marriage, but just to start dating and getting to know a lot of other people." And I said, "Well, what were the specifics?" And she said, "Well, I came from a family where education was everything. Education was like the highest value, the highest expectation." And she said, my whole life was like that. And I went to an Ivy League school and everything was so important about education. And, she said, I just had, and then and my dating life was stuck, and had some other requirements. And she said, then I read the book, and I said, okay, I'll go out with anybody that's safe once. And so she said, I was at this, some kind of gathering somewhere, and there was this guy there in her discussion groups, a book club or something. I don't know what it was. And he started talking to her, and she kind of liked him, say he's kind of interesting, or he's kind of cute or something. And then she says, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a firefighter. And she said, I remember that moment when, if I hadn't read the book, she said, and he asked me out right after that, she said, I probably wouldn't have gone, because that doesn't require graduate school. I mean, he might have gone to college, but that doesn't, he doesn't have an advanced degree, blah, blah, blah. She said, I never would have even gone. And they turned and looked at each other and both started smiling and laughing, because she got over that expectation and she found the love of her life. And see, if we have all these expectations and we disqualify everything, nobody's going to make it through. And when it comes down to it, let me tell you something about marriage, and that is, or any kind of significant relationship, and that is this, that there are certain things that we are attracted to, that are external. It might be looks, it might be intellect, it might be somebody's profession, or those are great things. Remember, I gave you the list of what you got to find in a significant, character, competency, right? Chemistry, and, be able to deal with and fit with each other's cultures, the 4 C's. But while we might be attracted to outsides, what you're going to experience over time is someone's insides, their makeup, who they are as a person, their soul. That's why we use the word soulmate, right? So, got too many requirements, you never can get to the inside. Can't find out what's really there, because that's what you're going to experience over time. There you go.